Hello, I'm Ross. I work at Rive, and today we're going to be talking about this very popular community file created by a user called Ducks. So what's going on in this file? Obviously, we have our main loop, which is him breathing. The body and the neck and the head are moving up and down. Also, the hair is moving and the peak of the cap is moving up and down as well. Then, as a separate loop, we also have a blink now to create a separate animation loop. I'm guessing this will be on a separate state machine layer. But as well as this, we also have interactivity built in. This will be controlled by a joystick which covers the entirety of the artboard, and then the joystick handle will be following this circle which is following the cursor. There's some pretty clever things going on in this Rive file, and so in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make something similar using the same concepts. So here we have a design made in Rive. Let me go through the layers. So first of all we have the left ear, the fringe, the face, which is a group that contains all of the individual pieces of the face, then the head itself, then the right ear, the back of the hair, the collar, and the body. So if I'm animating the head, that means I need to group all of these layers that compose the head and group them. And I'll call this head complete. Then I will change the anchor point to the bottom center of the head using the shortcut Y. I'm also going to change the anchor point for the collar, put it in the bottom center, and I'll do the same to the body layer as well. Bottom center. Then I'm going to group all three of these layers and just call it character and change the anchor point as well. Now I'm going to animate an idle bounce. Let's go into our first timeline. Increase the length of the timeline to about 5 seconds. Just type in 500 and then tap enter. Then we can expand this out, set it to loop, and then we can set the work area to a small work area near the middle. This will give us space either side for loose keyframes. So the first thing we're going to do is go to the first frame and then select character and then set some scale keyframes. Go to the middle of the loop, squash it down by a couple of percent points and make it wider by a couple percent points. Then the beginning keyframe should be taller by a couple of percent points and skinnier by a couple of percent points. Then copy and paste the beginning keyframes at the end. Make sure this is near the middle. Highlight all of the keyframes, apply Easy Ease, and press play. Okay, now let's animate the head itself going up and down. So just create a Y keyframe there. U to open up all existing keyframes within a layer. Move it down. And then at the end, copy and paste the beginning keyframe. Highlight them all. Easy Ease. Press play. Now, I actually want to delay these head keyframes by a couple of frames, but then we're missing keyframe data at the beginning. How do we add some keyframe data at the beginning? Well, just copy and paste all of these. So we're doubling the amount of keyframes, and that way we can highlight them all, drag them forward. Now we have some keyframe data here at the beginning, and we've been able to delay the keyframes. Press play. And now the movement of the head has been delayed. Let's animate the face. If we just go into the head, we can find the face group. Create a keyframe for the Y position. Go to the middle. Move it down. Go to the end and copy and paste the beginning keyframes. Easy Ease. I also want to delay these keyframes, so I'm going to have to double up and then move them here. So the head is slightly delayed and the face is even more delayed. We can see this in the keyframes. I also want to lower the collar, so set a Y position keyframe for that. move forward, create another keyframe, copy and paste, and easy ease. I should also animate the fringe, maybe at the same speed as the face. Create a keyframe, go to the middle, create another one just a little bit lower, go to the end, copy and paste the beginning keyframe. Easy ease. Where's the face? Oh yes, it's delayed. So double up, and then move these keyframes into place with the face keyframes down here. Oh, one keyframe forward. Okay. Okay, so this is our idle bounce. And we are playing our idle bounce within its own state machine layer. We'll just call this idle bounce again. To animate the blink, we need another state machine layer. Call this blink. And create a new timeline. And call this blink. Now, Rive enables you to be playing multiple animations at the exact same time, even if they have different lengths. So we have our blink timeline and we have our idle bounce timeline. And in the state machine, we have two state machine layers. Idle bounce has the idle bounce timeline, and blink has the blink timeline. So because we are playing multiple animations at the same time, we need to make sure that we're not animating the same keyframes in each of our animations. Otherwise, the keyframes will interfere with each other. And when keyframes interfere with each other, that can lead to a bunch of weird side effects. So, for instance, in my idle bounce animation, I'm animating the scale of the character group. What happens if I animate the scale of the character group in the blink timeline? So, let's just set a keyframe for it to be 100% and 100%. So now if I press play, idle bounce is animating the scale of the character group. And in a separate state machine layer, the blink timeline is animating the scale of the character group. What's going to happen? Press play. And what it looks like to me is the keyframes in the blink timeline are overriding the keyframes in the idle bounce timeline. So, like I said, we got to be careful that we don't animate the same layers when we're playing different animations simultaneously. So let's just keep this concept in mind as we move forward. Let's animate a blink. Open up my face group, go into the eyes, highlight the right lid, tap enter, and then tap enter again to edit the vertices. Tap this button to key all vertices. Then move forward a few frames, key all vertices again, and I'll just edit the shape to match the bottom of the eye. Then I'll move forward a few frames, copy and paste, move forward a few frames again, and copy and paste the beginning keyframes. So if I set my work area to just be around this blink so we can see it a bit better, let's see how that looks. Okay, it's quite quick. Move these keyframes around, retime it. Easy ease. Okay, that's fine. Then highlight the right eye, tap enter, and then enter again to edit the vertices. Key all vertices there, move forward, key all vertices again. And now I'm going to change the shape. So the eye animates down with the eyelid. Copy and paste this keyframe, and then copy and paste the first keyframe, and then highlight them all and make sure they're all eased. Okay, cool. Now highlight the right eye layer and create a keyframe for its opacity. Open this up. There it is. Make that a hold keyframe. Move forward to the point where we want it to disappear, which would be here. Create another keyframe. Make sure that is also a hold keyframe. And move forward to the point where we want it to appear again. which will be here. And hold keyframe again. Let's see how that looks. The white being above the lid is bothering me, so let me just change the shape of the eye so that this point goes a little bit below, and maybe this point too. There we go, that'll be fine. Copy and paste this second keyframe there, and now I think that should do it. Okay, now let's animate the left eye as well. Highlight left lid, tap enter, and enter again to animate the vertices. Keel vertices there. Move it down to emulate the shape of the bottom of the eye. Move forward. Copy and paste. Move forward again. Copy and paste. Easy ease. Okay, good. Now for the left eye shape, enter, enter. Keel vertices. And move this down. This as well. Okay, easy ease. Let's see how this looks. Copy and paste that one. Copy and paste the first one. Oh yes, and affect the transparency of the left eye. Go forward to here, 0%. Go forward, and then just as it starts opening, let's create another 100%. Highlight all of these, hold keyframes, there we go. Okay, there is our blink. And just like I said before, we've made sure not to animate any properties that we also animated in the bounce, which means that the two animations are able to play simultaneously without interfering with each other. So if I go to the state machine and press play, both animations can play, and neither interferes with the other. Try to keep this concept in mind as we move forward and create interactivity using our joystick. Let's create a joystick that covers the entirety of the artboard. If you zoom in or out, you'll realize that it's not scaling with the artboard. To do this, we need to check on Draw in World Space. That way it scales with the artboard. And now I realize that I need to shrink it down and move it into the center. So it is just covering the artboard. Then, to make this handle follow my cursor, I can't actually make it follow my cursor directly. I need to make a little circle that follows my cursor and then use that little circle as the source. So let's create a little circle. You can't see the circle because the joystick always covers everything on the artboard. No matter what position the joystick is in, even if it's below the character, if the joystick is visible, it's always covering every single layer. So let's just hide the joystick for now. Call this cursor follow. I'm going to make the color a light blue, like that. To make this shape follow my cursor, all you need to do is create a listener. Call this cursor follow, listen. Set the target of the listener to cursor follow. Back into the listener, change this setting to pointer move. Get rid of this by tapping the minus button there, and then add align target. Set the target to cursor follow as well. Back into the listener settings, and basically what we're saying is if my pointer is moving on the cursor follow layer, then align the cursor follow layer to my cursor. So if I press play, nothing happens because my mouse is not currently moving on the cursor follow layer. But if it does, the cursor follow layer starts following my mouse. But you'll notice something. If the mouse moves too quickly, then the mouse actually moves off of the cursor follow layer, and the cursor follow layer can no longer follow the mouse. The mouse has to be touching it at all times. So how do we make it follow it at all times? We just need to increase the size of the cursor follow layer without increasing the size of the ellipse. How do we do this? Well, what we do is highlight the cursor follow layer and group it with Command G, and just call this cursor follow group. Then inside the cursor follow group, duplicate the cursor follow layer, and then increase the scale of this duplicate to just cover the artboard entirely, so it's absolutely massive. Then you can get rid of the fill. So now the cursor follow group contains two layers. One is the original circle, and then another one is this massive invisible circle, which is always covering the artboard. And by having this massive layer within the group, the size of the actual group has also enlarged to reflect the size of the layers contained within. So this means that we can go into our listener settings, change the target to be the group instead. So now it's saying, if our pointer is moving on the group, align the group to our cursor. So now if I press play, my mouse is always going to be moving on the group because the group is absolutely massive. I can move my mouse really, really fast, and my mouse will never leave the group. If I make the joystick visible again, I can set the handle source to be the cursor follow group, which means the handle of the joystick is always going to follow the cursor follow group, and the cursor follow group is always following my mouse. So if I press play, the handle is following my mouse. So we can now control our joystick with our cursor, but how do we control things with our joystick? Let me give you a quick example before we jump into the character. So if I just hide my joystick and hide my character, I have my circle, which is controlling my joystick. You can see up here that the joystick is still active even when it's invisible. So let's control something. Back into design mode, and I'm going to create a square. Make it red. Open the state machine and create one timeline. I'll just call this red square. At the beginning of the red square timeline, I'm going to set a X position keyframe, and at the end I will set another X position keyframe, except the square is now over here. This is all that is happening in this timeline. Back into the state machine and highlight our joystick. Now I can set the X-axis of the joystick to control the red square timeline. So now if I press play, as I'm controlling the joystick, I'm actually controlling the timing of the red square timeline. And the red square timeline doesn't even need to be hooked up in the state machine. It doesn't have its own state machine layer. It is nowhere. The joystick itself is controlling the animation. So let's implement this same concept with the character. First off, delete the red square, then show the character. And now I'm going to change the red square timeline to be called character X, because we're going to be animating the character's movement along the X-axis. For the first keyframe at the beginning, go into character, and I'm going to set an X keyframe for the position of the ear. Now, I also want to set a keyframe for the fringe, but if I remember correctly, we already animated the fringe in a different timeline. So in order to animate the fringe without affecting any other keyframes, I just open up fringe and highlight all of its contained layers and group them. And I'm going to call this fringe move. This way I'll know to animate this group with these properties instead of this group with these properties that we've already animated. The two sets of keyframes are not going to interfere with each other. So open up animate mode, and I will set a position keyframe for that. If I remember correctly, I also animated the face in a separate timeline, so I will group these as well and call this face move. Then I can open up animate mode and I can affect the X position of this group. Then, because I haven't animated the right ear before, I can set an X position for that. And I'm pretty sure I haven't animated the hair back either. Then I can go to the end of the timeline, highlight all of these layers, and tap U to show all existing keyframes. And now I can adjust this face keyframe. If he's looking over that way, then that ear needs to be there. The left ear needs to be there. The hair back needs to be over there. And the fringe needs to move with the face, but not as much. So this timeline just looks like this. And so if I open up my state machine and then highlight the joystick and make sure that the x-axis is set to character X, when I press play on the timeline, the mouse is affecting the position of the face on the x-axis. Now let's control the y-axis. To do this, we need to create another timeline, call this character Y, and do exactly what we did before. So with the left ear, instead of animating the X position, we set a keyframe for the Y position. Then go down to fringe move and set a keyframe for the Y position, face move, right ear, and hair back. Then go to the end, highlight all of these, tap U, and now we can animate. So the face should be lower at the end. So should the fringe. The hair at the back should be a little bit higher. And so should the ears. So this timeline looks like this. And now if we go into the state machine, highlight our joystick, and set the y-axis to control character Y, and press play, so now you can see that we are affecting the X and the Y-axis. You can see that there's a gap in the hair here if we're facing all the way down. I also want to animate the pupils, so let's do it. First of all, going to character Y, and we're going to fix that hair issue. So in the fringe, I will set a keyframe at the beginning, and then if I go forward, set another keyframe, and I can lift this up to close that gap. Then in character X, I'm going to open the face, open the eyes, and set positions for the pupils. And because we are in the character X timeline, I'm only going to set the X position for these pupils. Open up, and I'll set that one to be over there, and this one to be over there. Go to the end, set new keyframes, cool. Now go into the character Y and set Y keyframes for the pupils. Open them up. So at the beginning they need to be looking up, and at the end they need to be looking down. Now if I open up the state machine, the movement looks a lot more characterful. So that is how to control a character and make it follow your cursor.